It was good, YouTube. Can I put this in your forehead meat real quick? What I'm here to talk to you guys today about is how the race war, gender war, and cultural and also diasporan wars are really all just the same war. Let me explain. So the way that you can tell how this war, like these wars exist and the ways in which they are happening is because of something's called systemic stance between being favored and targeted. Now, when it comes to the race war is really only fought between white and black because those are the only two real races in America. Oop, I put one of my whatever. All right, but yeah, so the race war is only between white and black. Now, the reason why it's only between white and black is because all the other races fall under culture. They don't fall under race. They fall under culture since they all come from different places where their culture is, what defines who they are. But they come from a cultural, back and forth, not a race back and forth, because race was determined by white people back in the days of slavery. But for the gender war, what we have is, of course, women versus men. And women have the systematic favor in the gender war and men don't. And you're also going to see how this kind of ties into the video that my last video I did, one of my reparations video, how it affects how when white supremacy acts against black Americans, it really acts against all Americans. This kind of leads into what I was talking about with all of these different wars. And then, of course, we have the cultural and diasporan wars. Now, these are specifically because culture is mainly for the folks who are considered, non-black. So let's say red Native Americans, even white Europeans white Americans to a certain extent, but mainly people of color, not black. That's what the cultural war is. So red Native Americans, Latinos, and Asians. And then the diasporan wars, which are specifically fought for, they're specifically fought with black immigrants versus black Americans again. So black Americans are kind of thrown into more than just one war. We're in all of these wars. And when it comes to men, you can consider it like black Americans have what men have, but men also, especially white men and then immigrant men, have specific privileges that black American men do not, or protections. So getting specifically into race, we'll get into the side of the favored, we see that they all have what I call safety nets. This is how you can tell who is systematically favored in all of these different wars, is who has the safety nets. And now, starting with the white safety nets, let me get in a little closer. So some of the things that they are seen as being able to get away with, some of the things that they receive that are a benefit to them is that they are seen as less criminally inclined. Even though white on white crime is, about as good and high as it is in the black community, they always bring it up against black people in order to demonize us. Innocent until proven guilty, which you already saw. They're normally perceived as being innocent and also being given the benefit of the doubt just because they're white. So this innocent until proven guilty is pretty much like it goes hand in hand with having the benefit of the doubt. And then we have first selected for high paying jobs. I listened to this podcast by Jason Black, the Black Authority. He was talking about how some people get kind of selected for these jobs where black people are training their replacements, and it's normally like white people who are just trying to give their son a job or give their nephew a job or give their neighbor a job or something, just trying to give them something to kind of, you know, get them on their feet or whatnot. But they just kind of railroad them into these higher paying jobs, sometimes even without any experience or any credentials. And then because of that, they are economically boosted. They're economically boosted because they have things like nepotism and what I call racial nepotism, where it's not based on specifically just you having a family, but based on the race that you're attributed to, that helps you get these high paying jobs, even if you really don't deserve it. And then, as seen as less criminal and innocent until proven guilty, and given the benefit of the doubt, they are also judged less. They are judged way less, or they are not judged with the same type of harshality as black people are. I believe I believe when they talked about drugs and whatnot and stop and frisk and whatnot, about white people being just as likely to have drugs on them, but being 4 times less. But black men are 4 times more likely to be stopped for it and have it found on them, even though white people are just as likely to have it on them, but they don't really, pull up on them. And that's because they're always judged less and they're seen as less criminal. And because of all of this, they're also allowed to dodge accountability, and they have excuses made for them. Like, I remember there was like this one Ivy League white dude who kind of, did something to this girl and behind a dumpster, and the judge just kind of threw it out because he was like, he doesn't want to ruin his, chances of having a good life. The same thing with Dylan Roof. I'm not Dylan Roof. What's that boy's name? Who went to that thing and unalived a bunch of people with a rifle, even though he was a minor and shouldn't even have been there in the first place. Kyle Rittenhouse. They made excuses for Kyle Rittenhouse in order to get him off, even though he was very guilty. He was very guilty, but they wanted to let him off. And because of all of these things, they're allowed to dodge accountability. They don't have to take accountability for what they do, which encourages them to constantly keep doing the things that they do, which is terrorize, black Americans and other people sometimes, but mainly black Americans. And then next we look at the safety nets of the women. Now the safety nets of the women, it gets pretty, safety nets for the women, it's pretty self-explanatory. They pretty much get all of the same, amenities from all of the safety net from whites, except for when it comes to women of color and other things like that, it doesn't really hit that well. And especially when it comes down to black American women, it does not hit that hard. But normally women in general, when compared to men of their own race, then yeah, they do get the same type of benefits. And on top of the safety nets that they receive, all of those, which is like, excuses made for them, benefit of the doubt, not seen as criminal, first selected for high paying jobs, which is the real DEI, especially with DEI really being for like non-black people, but black people are always blamed for it. But that's another thing for a different day. That's another video. But so women, on top of that, they also get alimony. They get alimony, and they get child support, and they get welfare. So on top of all of the things that white people get to have in general, they get pretty much most of those on top of having alimony, child support, and welfare on their side as well. And then when we look at the cultural and diasporan wars, it's going to be it's a good little bit right here. All right. So these ones, these ones get changed a little bit because they're not white. However, they, non-black immigrants and their descendants, they are allowed to mimic whiteness. they're allowed to mimic it. So they're not allowed to fully use it against white people or whatnot, but they're definitely able to use it against Black Americans. They're able to use it against Black Americans. So all of those white safety nets, they kind of get it when compared to Black Americans. And then on top of that, they're first selected for jobs in general. I was watching a video about this Black man who was talking about that they're kicking Black men out of construction jobs so that they can give them all to minorities. And I'm pretty inclined to believe that. I can see that being the case, because the same thing happened when they sent the jobs overseas, the factory jobs, which dealt a huge economic blow to the Black American community. And then we also have government handouts, which non-Black immigrants and their descendants and Black immigrants and their descendants are both receiving. They receive government handouts. I believe right now there's a bunch of African immigrants in New York going to court talking about how much more they need in aid, as if they were allowed to come, as if they came to this country legally. So it's like they kind of come with a sense of like, oh, you're supposed to give me a handout. And because the government wants to use immigrants in general, I didn't mean to do that. Since the government wants to use immigrants in general as a way to attack Black Americans, they give them these handouts, because the handouts that they are given typically come out of what would go to Black Americans. So they don't mind taking it out of Black American hands and giving it to immigrant hands. But then again, there are white people at the top, they complain about DEI, but it's like, that's your DEI right there. It's going to the immigrants, it's going to the white women, it's going to, LGBTQ plus and all these other places. But they're still upset with Black people in general because they think that we're receiving all of this stuff, which is something that they tell themselves in order to be upset at, Black Americans. And then we have artificially and economically boosted to take resources away from Black Americans, which is what I just described. This is in the safety net of the Black immigrants, and also first selected for jobs also go to Black immigrants as well. You could specifically see this in places of media, and especially like Hollywood, like my last video I did on Kai Cenat, with him being a minstrel worker in the higher echelons of YouTube, because he comes over and acts like a complete buffoon of Black American people and give, white people something to, or the dominant society, something to laugh at and something to, be happy over. Because for some reason, media with Black people suffering or Black people looking degenerate sells. And it doesn't, and I think I just heard I heard a clip somewhere where, when it comes to media, they say that they're not selling what people are buying. People are buying what they're selling. So this is what they want Black people to look like. And so they give money to the people who are going to work to make Black people look a certain way, because that's what they want Black people to constantly be seen as. So they give them first selections for jobs, especially for acting jobs that have to depict Black Americans in any type of way, especially a negative way. And then the last thing for Black immigrants and immigrants in general is that they're allowed to mimic Black American culture for money, which I just described. They're able to come here and pretend to be us, and kind of tether along to our culture, and then take everything that we've created in order to benefit themselves. So now when we look on the other side of the targeted, let's see, we have villainized. So the favored side has their safety nets, while the targeted side has their villainized or demonized terms. And so since Black Americans are on here twice, they, like, the race war and the cultural diasporan wars are slightly different. So I'm gonna show you what I mean. So the way in which you can tell that Black Americans are targeted is that they are, one, judged unfairly. They are judged very harshly for doing the same thing that other people would do, and are often made the face of criminality, which is criminalized, and they're viewed as people who have no worth and people who contribute nothing, and they do nothing for society. And because of this, I mean, not because of that, but because they're judged unfairly, Black Americans are often given no excuses, although they are also economically deprived and denied benefits solely for their own group, aka reparations. But they want to still say that, oh, you guys need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, or you guys aren't doing what you need to do. But it's like, when we look back over to what other groups receive, all of these other groups receive safety nets in order to help them get to where they are. But when it comes to Black Americans don't receive any of these benefits. Instead, Black Americans are villainized. And then when we go down to the cultural and diasporan wars, we see that Black Americans suffer government targeting. So this might be like business loans or other things like that. And they are not getting any of the type of stuff that they need in order to be able to compete in the capitalistic market that we have in America. And were also picked less for work. I believe that there was like, I saw they did a research where Black sounding names on resumes receive a lot less job opportunities, and the job opportunities that they did receive were all in very low paying industries and low paying positions in those low paying industries. They weren't of high paying positions and high paying industries. They were all low paying jobs in low paying industries. Those are the only times that Black people were able to find work. And when it came to higher positions or more reputable places, they were all denied pretty much. And then when we have other minority groups being promoted over this group, aka like what I just mentioned, is that they get to have all these artificial economic boosts to their culture, able to mimic Black American culture for money, able to mimic whiteness, and are selected first for jobs. And not only that, but they often use like other groups of people like, Asians as the model minority in order to beat down on Black Americans even more by saying, oh, you guys, you've been here for all these years. These Asian people have been here for only a couple of years and they've been able to build all this other stuff. And it's like, yeah, because they're not being constantly targeted by the government to keep them from what they need. You feel me? Like, they're not being kept from what they need by the government. And then also responsible for the negative things that other people do. So not only are we judged unfairly, but we're also even held responsible for the negative things that other people do. So if, like, let's say a Black immigrant comes over to this country and tries to, scoop up, try to, commit like a napping of kids or something, and they would just be labeled as Black, although they're not Black, because Black is specific to Black American culture. So because of that, not only that, they're able to mimic our culture, but then again, the blowback of it befalls our culture if other people and even other people do it. So if other people are committing crimes or other people are receiving all of the DEI benefits, it will still negatively blow back on this group right here. So that's what I mean by being responsible for negative things that other people do. But we're never responsible for the positive things that other people do. Whenever someone does something positive, then it's like, oh, well, they're Caribbean or they're African or they're European or whatever, but they're often they're often held at a negative, often held to the standards of often held responsible for the negative things that other people do while mimicking Black American group. And then also because of the opposite of white Americans or white people in general, Black Americans are always guilty until proven innocent. And even still, when they're proven innocent, like O.J. Simpson, they will still say that he's guilty, or they'll still say that it's guilty, or that they're guilty. For in white society, they're like Black Americans are always guilty first, guilty. with let's see, Jonathan Majors, guilty until proven innocent. They threw out all of the evidence to the contrary. O.J. Simpson, when it comes to all the stuff that Anna Nicole did, threw all of that out the window because if he's a Black American, he has to be guilty. When it came to Nate Parker, when he was coming out with that Nat Turner movie with no white savior, and Hollywood didn't like that, they brought up an old case about him where he was already proven innocent, and even still, when he was proven innocent, or he was determined to be innocent, they even still kept using it against him. And they kept using it against him in order to constantly make him seem guilty. And also the last thing is that the culture of Black Americans are constantly stolen or devalued. If you watch my video on why everyone hates Black Americans, you would understand why. And so with all of these things going on with Black Americans on the targeted side, when we look at men, we realize that men get both of these things, but on top of receiving those, men specifically often receive no reproductive rights and paternity fraud and child support cases. But men in general often receive, being responsible for negative things that other people do, i.e., women say, oh, all men are terrible, all men are trash, all men are this, all men are that. Although it may only be a select negative group of people, all men get villainized for it, which is pretty much what Black Americans have been feeling all along. And when it comes to other things like, let's say, government targeting, men over women, the thing is that the government targeting is nothing new. This has been something that they've been using on Black Americans from the very beginning. And when it comes to being picked less for work, the whole DEI thing, the biggest benefiters of DEI are literally these two groups right here. And then after them is these two groups right here. These are the benefiters of DEI. All of this, all of that are the benefiters of DEI. And when it comes to being judged unfairly and criminalized and viewed as worthless, men are often viewed as being worthless to women and to the government. They're often criminalized, which means men receive harsher sentences than women. Of course, especially Black American men receiving harsher sentences than, let's say, white women. But yeah, so you can see how, especially right here, when we see white and women, this is the ultimate safety net systematically favored person in the country right here. And then when we come over here, we see the biggest targeted demographic of people right here, Black American men. I just wanted to point that out real quick. But back to men, no excuses made. Oh, there's no excuses. Men are always seen as predators and all this other stuff and whatnot because of, the acts of other people. So they're always seen as terrible. And not only that, but they're denied benefits solely for their group. So anything that will be specifically helpful to not only men, but even boys are often targeted and not allowed. And that is all because this race war is all being fought on the same level as this gender war, which is also from the race war, gender war is an offshoot of the race war. So the gender war is so the cultural and diasporan wars are an offshoot of the gender war, and the gender war is an offshoot of the race war, or they both just come from race war. But they all come from the way in which America wages war against Black Americans is the same way that America wages the war against women and men. But in doing this, they make sure that people stay separate and people don't come together. This is also the reason why the white population is constantly dwindling, because the race war tactics that they're using also affects the gender war, which drives the divide between white men and white women. But now that what we're going through affects white men as well as Black Americans and Black American men, now white men are upset about it. And I just saw this video where this white guy was talking about the upcoming incel civil war uprising or something like that. And I ain't gonna lie, that might be the first video that I break down in this type of format in order to give like a really comprehensive understanding of what he's saying and how it applies to this. Because that video that I saw, it applies to this right here. From race to gender, white men right here, and how that race war affects also turning into this. When it comes to black, well, this, all of this. So from Black Americans to women to immigrants and Black immigrants and non-Black immigrants and their descendants and Black immigrants and their descendants. But how it actually turns into this. So white women, non-Black immigrants and their descendants and Black immigrants and their descendants and Black Americans. So white men wants to take out their frustration in this manner. But white men are finally receiving some of the villainization that has befallen Black Americans since the very beginning, and now they don't like it. But the thing is that you don't like it because you were okay with it happening to Black Americans, and specifically Black American men. You were okay, white men were okay with what was happening to Black American men, but now that what's happening to Black American men, some of the things are falling on white men. Now they're upset, now they're incels, and now they want to have a civil war and uprising, when this is something that Black American men have been dealing with for hundreds of years. So this is like a low-key understanding and deeper dive into why reparations will fix all of the problems in America, because right now they're giving preferential treatment to white women and non-Black immigrants and their descendants and Black immigrants, at least on the Democrat side. And the Republicans want to take it back to white women and men and exclude non-Black immigrants, their descendants, and Black immigrants and Black Americans. But, you know, I don't really care too much whether it's Republican or Democrat. They all, you know, want to be the controlling arm of white supremacy. So at that, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. But I hope that this was enlightening. I hope it gave you a good understanding as to why reparations will fix all of this. Because once reparations happens for Black Americans, we can then overthrow this whole safety net and governmental favor thing that gets rid of all of the favor, so that white men don't get to have that same favor anymore. But even though they don't get to have that favor, and white women don't get to have that favor, and non-Black immigrants and their descendants and Black immigrants and their descendants, although they don't get to have that same favor anymore, at least when we get rid of how they're villainized, the men will be as villainized, which means they'll be able to do more for the women, helping to end the gender war by effectively ending the race war, which gave birth to all of these other wars. So when we pay reparations and get rid of the race war, it ultimately gets rid of all of these other wars at the same time. So I hope this video was enlightening. I hope it taught you something. And if you feel like you want to debate it in the comments or something, go ahead and bring it on. I'm cool with it. And I hope I hope you guys subscribe to the channel, stick around with your boy so I can, like, you know, give more of these videos. I do plan on getting more into, like, you know, reacting to videos. And, well, not reacting, but I'll watch the video and then I'll break it down the way that I've break things down like this. And I'll give I'll connect the dots for us so that we can kind of see what, you know, type of picture that these dots are, you know, these connected dots are trying to paint to us. But yeah. But as for that, I thank you guys for watching. I thank you guys for stopping by. Have a great rest of your day, and peace.